I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the old ceremonial hunting tradition of eating the heart out of the first animal you kill. Meat from those organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. You can get those same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And remember, use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase. There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today.
Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast, your home for deer hunting news, stories, and strategies. And now, your host, Mark Kenyon.
Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast. I'm your host, Mark Kenyon, and this is episode number 307. And today on the show, I'm joined by New York bow hunter Jesse Coots to discuss the importance of being what he calls a freestyle hunter when targeting big old bucks. Okay, welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast, brought to you by Onyx. And I gotta apologize to you guys here in advance for my voice. I am dealing with a bit of a cold here, but I did have a great guest on that I chatted with before I got my cold, so the rest of the interview is gonna sound better. My guest today is Jesse Coots. And you might remember him from episode number 200. This was years ago now, in which we had a panel of some of the very best DIY deer hunters on the podcast to answer a series of frequently asked questions. And Jesse was one of those guests. And after speaking with him, I realized that there was just a lot more we needed to cover. I wanted to dive deep into what he was really focused on. He is just a very, very successful DIY bow hunter, and he's done it in a lot of different places. He's done it in the East Coast, he's done it in the Midwest, out on the plains, in the Rocky Mountain West, all over the place. So today I wanted to dive deep into how he targets big old bucks and how those tactics change from one area to the next. It's a really interesting conversation. He's got a lot to share. But before we get into that, I do want to just take a second to kind of, I guess, properly set expectations here, or kind of lay just a foundational thing to just keep in mind throughout this conversation. Because during this chat, you're going to hear that Jesse is really 100% very focused on chasing big bucks. That's what Jesse's personal goals revolve around, and many other hunters too. But I do just want to make it clear that it doesn't have to be that way for everyone. Right? We have a lot of different listeners out there, and I know that some of you are out there wanting to kill a big buck. Some of you want to kill an old buck. Some of you want to kill any buck, and others are just trying to get your first deer at all, any deer. And I want to say at the outset that, every one of those goals is good and admirable, and they're each awesome. We need to hunt for our own reasons and with our own goals and expectations. So don't let me or Dan or Jesse or anyone else out there you've ever heard in the podcast or that you encounter in daily life, don't let any of those folks make you feel like you need to do something like what they're doing. We each need to hunt our own hunt. And this has been particularly on my mind the last couple days because on my first hunt here in Michigan, I was after that 4.5-year-old buck I'm calling Tran. I was telling you guys about it last week on Rut Radio. I saw him on October 1st. Then on the 2nd, I went in for the kill. Now, I didn't end up seeing him that night, but I did see another really, really nice buck. It's this deer I've seen a bunch this summer and early fall. I've been calling him the Big 9, and he is just a gorgeous deer. He's right in that 130 class type size. And with, 20, 30 minutes left of daylight, he shows up on that very first hunt for me in Michigan, and he's standing there at 10 yards broadside for like 15 minutes. And I have him dead to rights. I could take a shot easily at any point. And I have to make this decision. What do I do? this would probably be, I'm pretty sure it would be the second biggest buck I would have ever killed in Michigan from an antler standpoint if I were to take him. But after looking at pictures of him and video of him in the preseason and then seeing him in person, it was just clear to me he was not a 4.5-year-old deer. He was a 3.5-year-old. But a 4.5-year-old buck or older was my goal for this season on this specific property. I know there's a chance to kill mature deer here. I know there's a chance for these deer to make it another year, possibly at least. So that was what I wanted to do. Wanted to kill a 4.5-year-old and really wanted that deer to be Tran, the deer I have some history with. So with that being the case, I decided, you know what? This deer I'm watching right here, he is an awesome deer. He's a beautiful deer. And I'd just like to watch him tonight and the rest of the year, hopefully. And maybe he'll make it. Maybe not. But I want to keep hunting. And that was pretty awesome. It was such a cool encounter and experience to just get to sit there and watch this great deer up close and not feel at all pressure like I have to shoot this deer because it's a big deer and it would be, people were really excited about it. I didn't feel that pressure. I just enjoyed the hunt for what it was and I enjoyed my decision. And I'm 100% glad I did that. But it was interesting. I shared this on social media after the hunt, and I was surprised by how many people attacked it. People saying I was jaded or a trophy hunting asshole or crazy or stupid or whatever it was. And I was like, man, I'm the one hunting here. If it's a decision that makes me happy, why the hell should you care? Why should you be critiquing me for what I do? And I'm sure everybody else out there has experienced something like this in your own personal lives. Maybe it's because you passed on a deer. Maybe it's because you shot a deer that somebody thought you shouldn't have. And I'm just here to tell you that that's BS. We just don't need to take it. In my case, yeah, I might not end up killing the old buck that I'm after. I might have blown my only chance at a really good Michigan buck, but that's okay with me. I personally want something different out of my season this year. That's a personal decision. I'm 100% happy with it. At my point in my hunting journey, I don't need to shoot the first deer I see or the first buck or the first nice buck. I want to push myself. I want to extend my season. I want to see what might happen along the way, what I might learn. And we all have that same right in whichever way you want to go with it. We each get to choose what kind of season we want, what kind of goals, what kind of experience, what deer will pull the trigger on or what deer will pass. That's up to you. That's up to me. So just remember that. If it makes you happy, as long as it's legal, do it. Don't let anyone's Monday morning quarterbacking impact how you feel about your decisions or the decisions you make. And then remember to give everyone the same grace too. That's my Thursday morning lecture for you. It's on my mind. I just want to make sure everyone feels comfortable hunting their own hunt. With that all said, as we get into our conversation today with Jesse, you are going to hear about his aggressive personal goals to try and kill big bucks. And even if that doesn't match with your mindset or your goals, think about the process he outlines and how that might be applicable to your own goals. Because the cool thing is that something that will work for big old bucks, it will also work for younger bucks. And if it works for younger bucks, it will also work for does. Very often, if it works on public land, it's also going to work on private land. So you can find ways to make this stuff applicable to your own situation. So I think we can all learn something from this one. And Jesse is a no-nonsense kind of guy. He just calls it like he sees it. So be prepared for that and be prepared to learn some interesting new ideas. All right, we are here with a repeat guest, Mr. Jesse Coots. Welcome back to the show, Jesse.
Hey, Mark, thanks for having me, dude. Honored to be here.
Hey, I'm really excited to have you. When you were on last time, it was our 200th episode, and we did this big round table with a group of different people, and that was the first time we got to chat. Our mutual friend Andy had kind of brought you to my attention, introduced us. So after that chat, I just got to thinking that you had such an interesting perspective, like a very no bullshit perspective that I appreciated. And so ever since then, I've kind of had it on my back burner. Like, I got to get Jesse back on. Because it just seemed like so much more we could cover. Well, finally we're doing it. So I appreciate you making the time in the midst of hunting season to do this.
Cool, dude. Well, thanks for the kind words. I appreciate it. You kind of stacked your decks with that last group, yeah. Joe and Andy. I think those guys could literally mumble out just thought processes, and you would do well if you could just keep having people like that on the show.
Yeah.
They said things that I've tried to point out to people, and they said it off the top of their head, and it's like, yeah, these guys get it. So, yeah, I'm honored to be a part of any conversation with those caliber guys. They really got it.
Well, you're the star attraction now today, and I'm confident we're going to get into some really interesting stuff too. And as we're kind of talking about, you mentioned Andy and Joe and how they've really got it figured out. You obviously come to things with your own perspective too. And one of the things that I've taken from doing this podcast for 5+ years now, and talking to hundreds of different really, really good deer hunters across the country, is that everyone's got a different way they skin the cat. Like, there's no one way to be a good deer hunter. There's many, many different ways. And oftentimes they're wildly almost opposite. Like, one guy might be really good doing X, and then one guy might be really good doing Y, which is like completely against what X was, but still they managed to get it done. But what I think's interesting about you, based off of that conversation we had, and then also some stuff I read about you a while back, correct me if I'm wrong here, but you describe yourself as a freestyle hunter. So you're not devoted to, like, you don't have a way. You like to do kind of a little bit of everything. Is that still true? And if so, why? Why do you like that diverse approach?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. You're a pretty observant guy in general to pick up on how so many different guys have so many different techniques and reasons for it. And when you had mentioned that you wanted to do this podcast, I thought about some things, just in my mindset, what I've been strong at. And I thought, I got to make sure to be clear when I say anything, that this is my opinion. And this is strictly stuff that has worked for me, because I'll listen to someone else, or sounds bad, but I don't really listen to podcasts. I don't really watch TV. But every now and then I'll catch a TV show and I'll just be like, this guy's a clown, and I have all the respect in the world for 99.9% of these guys. But I'll think to myself, this guy's a clown. Like, this is a joke. My wife could kill a gagger buck here. Like, this is stupid. However, the point that his technique is working for him in his situation. And I think that's one thing that screws a lot of guys, especially guys that, I don't want to use the term jump on the bandwagon, but guys want a cure-all, or they want somebody to tell them, do this, this, and this, and you're going to kill big deer. And I'm here to tell you, like, do not, anything I give you, this is a style that works in this area or that area. And truthfully, the way I hunt in my home state is completely different than the way I hunt when I go to Ohio. And then when I go from Ohio to Illinois, that style is actually different. And when I go to Kansas, it's different than all three of them. And same with North Dakota. So I think that's why I love that. Like, I love the change of things and figuring. I love puzzles. I love playing chess. It's fun and to figure that out. So if you get stuck in the mindset that, okay, I've got the buck roar and I've got these huge antlers, I'm going to do the buck roar and smash these antlers together and this hardwoods, and I'm going to have bucks running in. Well, you have to make sure that you're in the same circumstances that guy on TV is in. And if you are, you might call in a gagger buck, but if you're not, you're probably going to scare every 3.5-year-old out of the woods. So, so you're exactly right. And I've been extremely, successful in the fact that it seems like every state I go to, I just run into people, and I have always had a knack for running into, like, really good dudes. And most of these good dudes have turned out to be killers. And I've made friends via, bow sight and archery talk and stuff like that years ago. I probably haven't been on a social media page in 10 years. But those little connections I made, blossomed into great friendships along with other friends from them. And the interesting thing is when you hunt, if you were to ask me how I scout my home state, I can nail it. And then when you say, but there's a big difference in how I'm going to scout out of state. Yeah. And guys need to decipher that. And not only out of state, but what state. And then, for instance, when you hunt Kansas, you could go to eastern Kansas. It's completely different than western Kansas. So you've got to be able to be diverse, and I always try. I love analogies. So if you're wrestling against a guy who's a phenomenal takedown technician, you better figure out how to be good on the mat quick, because as soon as he takes you to the mat, you're going to have to reverse him and not let him stand up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's the same with, if you're hunting high pressure whitetails, you better learn where everyone else is hunting, and you better learn to be deadly on your entrance and your escape, and not let the deer know that you're there.
Yeah.
Whereas, and you can't call. Some of these guys call like maniacs, but when you go to a place like Kansas where there just is no deer, Western Kansas, where the deer population is extremely low, it's opposite than here. The bucks that are there, you need to be very vocal. They are looking for fights. They're literally looking for other deer. So everything changes. So I would totally consider myself a freestyle hunter. There's guys that are phenomenal decoyers. And I would never decoy in my home state. Very few places I would decoy. However, I actually shot a deer last year on a decoy in Kansas.
I saw that.
It's just ridiculously deadly. That Garrett Rowe from Heads Up Decoy makes those, and it's almost like cheating. It's unbelievable. And but that's a technique that would not work here. Like, yeah. But you have to be able to decipher the style and what works. So having connections in different places and then just listening to them is important.
So then how do you, though, determine which styles work in your area? Like, I got to imagine, if I were to put myself in the shoes of somebody just even listening to this podcast, over the years, they've heard all these different guys, and now they're hearing you. What's your mindset when you start getting new ideas from people, and then you need to go home and say, okay, will that work here? Will this work here? Will this thing? Like, do you actively take these ideas in your head and you say, okay, I think there's a chance, but I just don't know if it'll work here. So I'm going to do it for 2 hunts this year, or I'm going to try it once. I'm going to swing for the fences with this crazy idea I heard, and we're going to find out, can this work in New York or no? What's just like the way you think through the filter of how do I see what makes sense for where I'm at versus what's some other guy kind of thing?
Sure. So, if you're 20 years old, I think it's going to be difficult for you to process someone's input. And I think that's where you struggle a lot, because really you've only been hunting for 8 or 10 years. You don't have a lot of history with hunting. I'm 42 now. And when someone tells me, a style, or this has been working a lot for me, just for instance, the decoy thing that my buddy Matt turned me on to, Travis turned me on to. I got a bunch of great friends I've made over the last 15 years bow hunting Kansas, and I'm getting advice from not good bow hunters, but like high-end, upper echelon, no joke. Like they're not telling me this to stroke their ego. They're literally being like, listen, dude, this is what you need to do when you get down in those yucca plants. If somebody like that gives you advice, like, I stop talking and I literally try and absorb everything that he's saying and try and really put it into my mind. Mm-hmm. And with that being said, I can also think about situations I've been in the past and think like, you know what? He's right. I remember stalking this one buck, and that buck actually, and this is true, I was stalking a buck and belly crawling to a buck, and I was within bow range, but I wanted to get this yucca plant a little closer. And another deer came over the hill and thought I was a deer and literally started posturing towards me. And if I had had a decoy to just stick up, like, I didn't want to shoot the one that caught me. I wanted to shoot the bedded one. And, when he made these comments about how deadly these decoys are, it's like, yeah, he's right. I'm going to go out on a limb and get one of Garrett's decoys and, do exactly what he said. And he's right. You can literally, if you set it up right, if you do it well, it's really amazing. It's a blast. I mean, if you're bored, just go to Kansas, even if you don't have a tag, and just go out on walk-in hunting area with a decoy and decoy deer. It's ridiculous. I mean, I hate for even people to know that. I hate for people to know that secret, but I don't know. It's so much fun. But don't try and do that in Ohio.
Right.
Like you are not going to do that in hardwoods, and you're just not going to get away with that in certain places. But that's how I would. And it's just like life. You can't be afraid to fail. If somebody gives you great advice and says, listen, you're a very talented welder, set aside $40,000 and start your own business. You have what it takes. Do this, this, and this. if that guy is a self-made multimillionaire who's very successful, I would take his advice and I would quit my job and start doing it. So, you know, if you're talking to some guy at the grocery store that's smoking a cigarette and he's got Walmart camo on, you know, and he's telling you how he killed this 158-inch deer, well, that's great. In my opinion, you got lucky and killed it, but I'd still listen to his story. If it's his first big buck, you know, that's it. But if he's killing them every year like that, I might listen to him. But chances are he's a clown. So, you know, if a high-end guy is giving you advice, you know, you gotta listen to it and then think in your own mind, like, could I have used, you know, how would this have worked in the past? And I think I'm probably really outside of the box in a lot of my hunting stuff because I've hunted a lot. I've hunted a lot of different states, and every state is really can be a different style. And you know, hunting pressure changes it. The time of the season changes it. The lay of the ground changes it, and you know, just the amount of deer that are there change it. So many things change it, and when you start weighing in all these different variables, it changes your style, and it makes you a more you know, a killer. I mean, you could probably bounce that off somebody like Andy. I mean, he's killing great deer and elk and stuff in numerous different states. And you don't mean to, but when you're doing that, you know, it's literally like cross training. You know, you're just becoming you know, more adaptable. And then you put it like things I've done out west. I've put to work here that I never did. You know, 20 years ago, I carried junk binoculars like on a strap around my neck. You know, it literally looked like a little league player going out with his cleats on his neck. It was a complete joke. And, you know, the first couple times I hunted out west, I was like, man, I got to change my optics and change how I do this. And then I hunted with a really elite guy, Matt Schimberg, and he, his glassing was just to all we did. And it was so much fun. And it was like, that was in Arizona, but still the idea, I write down, I was like, I am going to become a master of optics and a master of glassing. And, you know, I don't care where you hunt. If you are not really using your optics a lot, you're really missing some stuff. So, you know, that's just stuff you learn. But yeah, if somebody gives you a good pointer, you got, you know, I try it. And there's just oddball things that come up. Like, for instance, one time I was hunting this spot here and I was after a good buck, and I knew I needed to stay away from him to really pin down where he was going to be. And I was so pissed because it was windy, and this is in the middle of nowhere, but out of nowhere, this cardboard box blows into this alfalfa field. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like this hunt is like, I can't get down and move this box because it's getting to be prime time. And this stupid box is in the middle of the field. And every deer that came out of that thicket walked to that box and sniffed it and like inspected it, including the buck I wanted to kill.
Wow.
And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. So I literally got down and got out of there, you know, at dark, and went back the next day at noon, grabbed that box and got it out of there. And I put a white 5-gallon pail there because I wanted to change it. And I shot that buck, you know. And the crazy thing is, some dude, Zeke Pfeiffer or something, I think that's his name. And excuse me for botching his name.
Yeah, Nebraska guy.
2 years later. Yeah, exactly. Like 2 years later, wrote an article about putting a 5-gallon pail out. And I smiled and thought, that kid is so on. That is so spot on. He wrote an article, like he had to have had the same experience that I had. And it was a wonderful article. And had I not had that experience, I would have been like, that's the dumbest. Do not do that. Do not put a man-made oil. You know, I literally put a 1540 Rotella T that I fill my diesel up with oil barrel out there, and every deer came to it and was curious with it. And I didn't shoot that deer. Like, he wasn't like on it, but he went around it, which pushed him closer to me. I smoked him.
That's fascinating.
So it's just those odd things that you have to be observant. And when you notice something, I mean, a lot of people, including myself, would have been pissed about that cardboard box. Instead, I was pissed about it, but I observed that, hey, this is the cause and effect of this. And maybe I can use this.
Yeah.
It's not a technique I use very often. I don't really hunt alfalfa fields. But it worked. It was just amazing for that. So
Well, it's interesting, as you're talking through all this, it makes me think of one of the kind of things I preach all the time, which is just go and put yourself in new experiences. Like there's almost no easier way to become a better hunter than to just force yourself out of your comfort zone. I mean, so many people I think get stuck in like, I always hunt this farm. Every year, this is where I hunt in my home state. It's where I live. It's my spot. That's where I hunt. And they just do that year after year after year after year. And they wonder why, things aren't changing, why they're not having a different level of success, why they've stagnated. But I think if you simply, without anything else, just force yourself to go new places. And then based off what you just said, I'll add to that, hunt with new people, hunt new states and new places, and go out there with some new people every once in a while. And then do what you just said, actually listen, process what they say. That right there, I think can just take you leaps and bounds, because you have to then, every time you go somewhere new, every time you're in that new situation, you're forced to play that game of chess in a new way. If you're doing it in the same farm every day, all the time, you're not growing. Like the only way to, and I'm preaching to the choir here, I realize, but like the only way to get like stronger muscles, right, is you got to tear them down a little bit. You have to stress them enough till actual muscle fibers start to break just a little, and then they grow back stronger. I think the same thing is the case with the hunter. You need to stress yourself, put yourself in new challenging situations. It might break you down at first, but then you figure it out and you become better. I mean, that's basically what you're saying, right?
You're an impressive dude to pick up on that. That is 110%. Like the key, my whole life changed when I was like 20. I was a killer, just a flat out killer, not a big buck killer, just a killer. Like we were poor, we needed meat. Like I just killed everything in my pack. If I had a tag, things were getting killed. But I wanted to kill big deer. Like I was good at shooting, just getting things killed. That's it. I was not a big buck killer. And when I was about 20, it was just frustrating because I would find big buck sign. I would, bump big deer. I knew there was big deer in that area. And there was a tree I can walk. I know right the tree I was sitting in. And I was sitting in this tree one day. It was a beautiful fall day. And exactly what you just said was happening to me. I was sitting on a spot that my father had showed me where to hunt. He had showed me how we walk in, where to sit. I was doing the same rigmarole, and I was thinking to myself, man, I am doing everything how everyone is telling me to do it. I'm doing exactly what my dad said. I'm doing exactly what John says. I'm doing exactly what Tom says. And I am just getting average results. And then I thought, luckily for me, which sounds bad, I had a falling out with my dad, literally then. That's when we kind of parted ways. And I started to question everything my father had ever, told me about, ever taught me. Not that he was a bad guy or anything, but I just questioned everything. And I remember sitting there thinking, you know what? My dad is not a very good hunter. He's a gun hunter. He's killed one deer with a bow and arrow. Why am I taking advice from this guy? And then I thought, John is not a very good hunter. He is a gun hunter. I started thinking, all these guys that are giving me all this advice, I'm not processing anything myself. I'm just doing what people tell me to do. And I sat in this tree and I literally thought, I bump the deer every time here. I know there are deer here. Why am I bumping them? And then it's a morning hunt. Why did I just walk through that whole field that they're eating in to get in here? And my wind is blowing into the bedding grounds. And I remember sitting there and I thought, this is stupid. And I was in a junk climber. I climbed down the tree, put it on my back. It was prime time. And I thought, I've already ruined this. I'm getting out of here. And I walked out of there. And this was before the internet. And I literally drew a map in my mind of what that woods and I still have the map, what that looked like, and drew in the fields, and then figured out that I needed to attack this, obviously, from the downwind side. I was attacking with the wind at my back.
Wow.
So I went in that night and I sat in a hedgerow and just glassed in a place I've never sat. And I couldn't believe the deer that trickled out of this thicket and why they trickled out everywhere except for the spot I was that morning. So I reevaluated that and I attacked that woods the next day from the downwind side, and I only went in just a little bit. And the deer I saw, then I was into deer that had no idea I was there. And I could tell these deer were a little spooky. They were looking up to where I had always sat. I was only 100 yards difference in this woods, but they knew they were actually hugging the downwind side of the woods to check and see if I was there. And right then I was like, I got it. Like I learned something. Now I'm a student, and I was so excited to have figured this out on my own. And I literally said to myself, I am deleting my memory of anything anyone has ever told me. And I am only going to put into play things that I know are facts. And right now I know the way that I attack a woods, entrance and escape, is very important, because I just learned this today. And I shot my first, my first Pope and Young buck that year. And I shot a Pope and Young buck in my home state every year since that, except for last year. Is the first year in my life I didn't shoot a deer in this state, just from laziness. But it just comes down to if you got to think for yourself. So anything I say on this podcast today, take it with a grain of salt. Think about what I say, but don't take it for gold. Don't think like, oh, he said this, I got to do that. Mm-hmm. You got to put it into play, and you got to think about, like, is this going to work in my block? Can I attack this from the downwind? Can I get away with attacking from the upwind? Or, you got to put these own things into play. And once I started doing that, I really don't watch TV shows. Like, I don't watch any hunting shows. I've enjoyed them. I probably watched them 15 years ago, and then it was like, this is just hindering me. Like, this isn't even doing good. I wouldn't tell anybody, like, don't watch those, but anything I've learned is literally from actual experience or from other people's, friends that are killers. And they've said, they've given me pointers about things that have worked for them, and I've put it into play. And it's like, and some of the stuff people have told me, it's like, I disagree with. Like, it's like, no, I'm not. Yeah. It does not work. But other people have told me stuff, and it's like, this sounds absurd, and it works for their area. So my buddy Matt Palmquist, go ahead.
I would like to hear what you're going to say about Matt.
Well, so Matt, I drew a mule deer tag one time. And I was, my goal was a big muley, like a 180 plus. To me, is a big muley. I don't come from mule deer country, and Matt's extremely calm, cool, and he's like, yep, I don't want him to be like, hunt here or here. I just go and hunt, and I love that. And he's great in the fact that he'll tell me what kind of terrain to look for or whatever. And anyways, I found a couple Gagger bucks. Two of them were. They were big. I mean, two of them had to have grossed over 200. So I was pretty tickled. The problem for me was they were on and off public, walk-in hunting area. But anyways, this one evening in particular, I glassed this buck up that I was looking for, and he was finally on this public, but it was literally like a quarter section, which is 160 acres, which seems like a ton, but that is not much. That's like a little tiny. It's nothing. Like, they are on and off a quarter section in seconds. And this buck was in the middle of it. And it's all like CRP that's up to your chest. And I had a flip phone, and I called Matt. I'm like, dude, this buck is, and he was huge. It was a big buck. I'm like, dude, this buck is in the middle of this field. I'm like, I'm losing light. I'm like, man, I was just kind of picking his brain. Like, I don't even know what to do. And Matt's like, does he have a doe with him? And I'm like, yeah, I think he does. Like, he hasn't left this spot. And Matt's like, man, you don't have much light. He's like, I'm like, I have no cover. He's like, he goes, just run right at him. He goes, try and hold your bow up or something like its antlers. He's like, just run at him. He's like, if he sees you, he's going to get on alert. But if that doe doesn't see you, if she stays there, he's staying. He's like, literally run up to that deer and shoot him. And his advice was something to that effect. And I was like, dude, I cannot run up to this deer and shoot him. And he's like, all right, well, he's like, that's what I would do. He's like, first of all, he's like, you don't have much choice. And secondly, I'm pretty sure that buck's going to stay there. And I'm like, all right, I'm going for it. Screw it. You're right. I mean, he's not coming back onto this public land anytime soon, I don't think. And I put my bow down. I put my phone down, grabbed my bow, and just sprinted. And I closed a lot of distance fast and just ran at this deer. And I got within 60 yards of him. And I literally just ran out of light and I was going up this hill on him and just didn't have enough elevation. But that buck stood there. I could have shot him in the back, but I couldn't get an arrow into his vitals. If I had, probably a recurve. I could have lobbed an arcing shot. But the point is, like, I would have never done that. Like, there's no way I would have gotten within 60 yards of that deer. But his experience and his terrain and his type of ground, and in that exact setting, that worked. And like I don't know how to figure that out. So that kid really advanced me a lot just with that tip, you know, and then you throw in his tip and Travis's tip and Garrett Rowe's tip of using that decoy. And it's like, man, those guys advanced me just with those two tips, using that decoy and how to use it. It would take a fella 5 or 6 years of just stumbling, just accidentally learning this. So when you can pick up those tips from killers like those guys, I mean, they saved me. You know, they put me on a different level fast, and being open to their ideas, it makes it deadly.
Yeah, and it sounds like, again, it's finding the right things that work for specific places. So those tactics work really great in that wide open country. It wouldn't work in New York.
100%.
Now, a lot of you guys are familiar with the old hunting tradition of eating, you know, some organ, the heart or a chunk of liver off the first animal you kill. I had that when I was a little kid, and it was a big deal. Organ meats were always prized by frontier people who knew the importance of getting a lot of different minerals and nutrients. And as often is the case, those guys were onto something, because organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. And you can get the same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil, made exclusively from regeneratively raised, grass-fed, and finished cattle. Heart and Soil's unique freeze-drying process means all those important nutrients are trapped in, ensuring you experience every one of the benefits of nature's superfood in a clean, convenient, taste-free capsule. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And make sure to use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase. That's heartandsoil.co. Use the code MeatEater. You ever get that feeling you're stuck inside staring at screens and a primal urge kicks in? You crave wide open spaces, fresh air, the chance to connect with the land? Well, maybe it's time to find your own piece of the wild, but searching for property can be a maze. That's where Land.com comes in. They got millions of listings across the country, from mountain ranches to hidden fishing holes. Their search tools are like a seasoned guide helping you narrow down what you want. Land.com isn't just about buying and selling. It's about finding a place to hunt, fish, explore, or simply sit by a campfire and listen to the crickets. So head over to Land.com today to turn one day into today, because trust me, there's nothing quite like the feeling of standing on your own piece of earth.
Let's take like an example period. I'd like to get your perspective on how to hunt a certain time frame, and then how that would be different in New York versus Ohio versus Kansas or something like that.
Sure.
So I remember hearing you talk about, I can't remember if we talked about this or if this was something you told Andy. Andy told me, but the fact that you really like, especially in New York, hunting kind of early or into the October lull, like that time period, you really focus on trying to get it done in New York, and then you travel elsewhere across the state. So when this podcast airs, it's going to be right about middle of October, right in that ballpark. So people right now are thinking, how do I get on a buck between like the 10th and the 20th or something like that? So when you're thinking of that time frame for you, maybe let's first talk New York, because it sounds like you're focused in New York quite a bit at that time. How are you approaching your hunts, trying to get a big mature buck on the ground at that time of year?
Yeah. So, first of all, I don't believe in an October lull at all. Like, it's not, these deer are eating, walking, pooping. There's no lull. There's a ton of crops up, and the weather's changing. The crops are changing. There is no lull. I've shot so many great deer in the lull that people talk about. It's a lull of knowledge is all it is. These deer are still living in the woods. They're still there. You know, there's thousands of acres of corn up. You know, oh, we can't find them. Yeah, it's because all the soybeans went from green to brown. They're not eating soybeans. Now they're eating the corn all day, and they're in the alfalfa at night. You know, there is no lull. But so when I attack, and I think I have an extreme advantage over a lot of guys in big buck states in the fact that I don't live in a big buck state. I live in a state that could be a mega state if our politics were different. But I live in a state that if you work hard, you can kill a 130, 140 inch deer. Your average guy here is probably thrilled to kill like 100, 110 inch deer. So it's a big advantage for me in the fact that I don't get stressed out over, there's not a 190 inch deer. Like I've got to get this deer killed before I go hunt Ohio or Kansas or Illinois. I literally will, I find 130, 140 inch deer and it's like, yeah, that's good enough. I'm killing them because it's only going to get so big here. Like I'm not, it's fine to leave. Where my friends in Ohio and Kansas and Illinois, I mean, they're like, yeah, I got a 170 incher in this block woods and, there's a 196 over here. And I mean, these poor guys, they can't go anywhere because how can you leave that? So that's a big advantage. It's a big advantage for me because like, it doesn't matter. I personally think everybody should kill. Like I'm a whitetail. I mean, I love elk and muleys, but whitetails are really what I know, and you should really kill a big whitetail in your home state. It's really easy if you sit down and figure out, there's certain etiquette that you have to have. In my style where I live, I personally think it's the easiest. You talk to other people and they think it's difficult, but we have a very big, where I live, it's all agriculture. Big crop fields where, your average field is probably 100 to 150 acres. And then your average woods is probably like 50 to 75 acres. With that being said, in my opinion, it's great because it's so easy. You can pick these deer up all summer. You can glass them. You can find big deer if you're just smart about it. You got to scout them. And scouting, in my opinion, is not walking through the woods, looking for deer tracks. All you're doing is screwing everything up. Like stay out of the woods, use good optics, get a tripod, get a good head, get a good pair of binoculars. They don't have to be super expensive, but the more money you can spend on optics, you'll have them forever and they'll be good. Find whatever your piece of ground is. And like what you were saying earlier, if you're hunting grandma's 90 acres and you've been hunting it forever, yes, that's nice that you have that, but Uncle Tom still hunts it and your dad hunts it and your cousin Tony hunts it. Like they shoot everything that moves. There's probably not big deer there. So if you really want to kill big deer, you have to hunt where big deer are. If you're not seeing big deer on Grandma and Grandpa's, like leave, go somewhere else and start finding big deer. So get permission on places and scout the daylights out of them. And that's all I do. I mean, it's really, my style has changed when I was 20 years old or 21. It was almost obscene how much all I did was work and scout for deer, and at dark I took girls out. That was it. Like that's all my life.
It's a good life.
Of. Yeah, it's a great. I've lived an amazing life. And if you're serious, and once, like I think in my mindset, like I everything is black and white for me. There isn't much gray area in life. And if I do something, I'm either all in or I have no interest in it. And hunting has been that way for me. And I really went from a knucklehead, like just an average blowhard that, was happy to even get a shot at a 90-inch deer to, 2 years later, I wouldn't shoot anything under 130, which in our state is like, that's like the equivalent of shooting a 160 or 170 in Kansas.
Yeah.
And that came from knowledge. And when I realized, how to attack things and this and that, I realized like, man, I'm doing something already that people aren't doing. And then when I started scouting and I started realizing like, man, I saw more good deer that first year I actually scouted than I had ever seen in a lifetime. And you hear these people talk like, oh, these deer are ghosts. No, they're not. They're not ghosts. They're literally, in a respectful way, they're dumb animals. Like human beings are smart. We are smart. Animals are dumb. So like mentally get that out of your head that they're going to outsmart you. Deer have wonderful senses. They have great vision. They have great hearing, and they have great noses. Like don't give them a reason to smell you, see you, or hear you. They're not going to outthink you. they're literally getting hit in the road. They're not smart. So once I realized like that they're very habitual, I learned their habits, and then I learned how to keep myself out of their instincts, and it's pretty easy. So in my home state, that's how I do it. I glass them up, and I'll be like, I try and find like 3 or 4 good areas that I can hunt. When I was a kid, I would literally leave every morning at sunup. If I was at work, I worked hard so that my bosses could not complain when I was like, I'm going to go look for deer for half an hour. I know not everybody can do that, but I literally was a maniac when I'm working, so that they were so happy with me that they couldn't fire me. And I would go look for deer at sunup and glass. And then I would go back to work and work like a maniac and then get out of work. And if we went to a graduation party or a wedding in the evening, when it came prime time, I would literally be like, hey, I got to go. I am going to go look for deer. I'm going to go look for deer for this last 45 minutes. And I know that my wife is wonderful. She'd just be like, yep, whatever, this is what he does. And a lot of times I would just slip away from the wedding, go look for big deer, even if it was 2 hours from my house. It's like, man, there might be big deer here. And that's the mindset. Like, if you're not that little, that first half hour of light and that last half hour of light, I mean, that's when you're getting most of your information. So if you don't have a lot of time to scout and stuff, you have to make time. It's kind of like exercising. You can teach people like, if you do this, this, and this, and eat this, you're going to be in great shape. Yeah, well, people still have to do it. Like, you have to actually do that.
Yeah.
And it's the same with scouting and killing big deer. You can tell people all the information they want, but you actually have to apply it. And one of the things with scouting and killing big deer, if you're going to kill big deer, you have to hunt where big deer are. And to hunt where big deer are, you have to learn where big deer are, and you got to scout them. So you got to put in the legwork and scout, and not just sticking cameras all over the place. Like, actually go out and visually see them and know that, okay, he stepped out of here. He stepped out on this edge. The wind is doing this. This is why he came from there. And, oh, you know what? He keeps looking behind him. Why is he looking behind him? I'm ready to go. But man, this one buck keeps looking behind him in the woods. Sit there, and after sunset, you see a gagger step out, and it's like, that's why he kept looking behind him. Mm-hmm. And even though, so, I mean, it's those little things. It's like, you got to put in that effort. And, I get luck all the time. People are always like, oh, you're so lucky. And it's like, I'm Irish, but I don't believe in luck. Like, this isn't luck. This is a little bit of thought process and a little bit of effort and then a little bit of execution. Like, I'm just putting the pieces together. And, I look at my circle of friends, and if you, like you, I'm sure, if you look at my phone for the last month with the dead elk that are laying on the ground, it's unbelievable. Yeah. And now come whitetail season, and it's going to be, my phone just blows up. And when I really think about the guys that I converse with, we all think differently, but exactly the same. I know that's odd, but like,
I know what you mean.
They have the exact same mindset, and they really have it. And nobody's afraid of work. Like, none of these guys are lazy. They're all putting in that little bit of effort. And, you can kill a good deer every 3 or 4 years. Anybody can do that. But, I struggle I don't know which one I'm going to kill, and those guys are the same way. They're like, well, I don't want to kill this, and I don't want to kill that one. And, that's the problem you have when you actually figure things out. It's like, oh, I just passed up a 140-inch deer in New York. I mean, that's stupid. I shouldn't have done that, but that's a good problem to have,
Yeah. Let's get to brass tacks then. Let's continue down with this example. So it's mid-October, and you're getting out every night you can. If you're not hunting, and you're glassing, you're scouting. You did that in the summer. Now it sounds like you're still going to do that at times during the season. Let's say you spot a gagger. You spot the buck you want to shoot. He steps out into a field, some kind of food source, and you spot him at last light. So now I want to know what's going through your head, and then what's your first hunt? Like, how do you just go right and set up right where you saw him step out? What are you thinking about? And then what happens if he doesn't show up that night? What do you do the second day? And it's interesting, as I'm reading this out, or as I'm saying this to you, this is exactly the scenario that happened to me over the last 3 days. Like, exactly. On October 1st, I glassed an area. I saw the buck I wanted to get a shot at. He came out. The next day, I moved in and tried to hunt where I saw him. The second day, because I didn't see him that night, I went back in for one more hunt in that spot, and I thought with the wind direction we had, it would actually be better for him, a little bit riskier for me, but I decided, you know what, that might actually be what he needs to come back out again, because this is a closer wind to what he moved on when I saw him 2 days ago. So I tried one more hunt. It didn't work out. Now it's today. Now I'm making a new decision. I'm changing things up. I'm going to take one more stab at him, but in a different kind of way. I'm curious, though, what's your mindset? How would you approach that? You spot a big buck. Now what do you do over the next couple of days to try to move in on him?
Right. So, again, if that's in my home state, I'm probably going to be hunting a piece of ground that I know extremely well, that I know how they travel in that woods and where they bed and all that. And if you have that knowledge, now you're one step up. And truthfully, I like to kill my deer. And before I had kids, I killed them all, like my New York deer, like the first day or two. That's when you need to kill deer, because everybody else isn't in the woods screwing it up. But say it's this time, we're in your scenario, in your situation, and you see a good buck. There's a reason he's there. And I would also take into account what other deer are with him. And if I've seen him with those other deer, if he's still running in a bit of a bachelor group, if he singled himself off. I mean, if he's in a bachelor group and just for instance, I killed a real white buck 10 or 12 years ago. And he was with two bucks all the time, like these same 2 bucks. And when these 2 bucks would show up, it was almost like he used them as a guard. Like these 2 little dingbats would just go everywhere. And I pretty much patterned those deer. He would always show up behind him. It might be 10 minutes behind him, but he would be there. And I killed this deer. He actually came out into a bit of it's just a grown-up field. And it's like a CRP field. And I saw these 2 small bucks. And anyways, that buck staged up, and he never moved from that corner. But I was in an observation stand. I wasn't even trying to kill anything. And I saw those little bucks, and I paid attention to what those little deer did. And those little deer did everything that the rest of the deer do when they go the way they went. So I knew where they were going to go and where they were going to feed. And there was this field that's on a different piece of property. And I thought they're going to go over into these soybeans and probably eat soybeans in this hidden field and in the dark. And then they're either going to bed in that woods across the street, which they tend to. So I kind of watched what those other deer were doing, and whatever the 2 smallest bucks did, I figured that buck is going to follow suit. And I killed them the following morning because they did just that. I figured they're either going to bed across that road, which he did. They went over and ate soybeans, and I went out and glassed them. Literally at sunup, I'm glassing these deer. They were coming down this little draw. But anyways, I glassed them, and I knew which stand to get in. And I spooked deer that were in the woods, but I didn't spook the deer that I wanted to kill. And so in that circumstance, it's kind of a tough one, but paying attention to not just that deer, but like the cause and effect and where he might go. Is there other food sources? Is he going to stay here? Now, there's another deer I killed one time. He was your typical, like an old man. Like, he's like all of us. He's like, I'm getting, like, I like people and stuff, but I would just as soon stay at home on a Friday night and have 4 or 5 beers by myself. And, I don't want to go to the bars, and I don't want to be around a ton of people. If I do, it's like a small group. And I think big bucks are that way. They don't want to dick around with all these little morons. They literally want to push them away, or they just want to walk alone. They want to go to their own spot. And when I see a big buck that is private, man, he's killable. Like, I like that. Because there's less, where all the other deer are going to go. He's not going to go there, and you can kind of figure out where the next best spot is. So, there's so much that comes into play. I think I should just come out there and get a Michigan tag and try and kill this thing for you. That's what I should do. You should just point. We'll do it together.
I'm going to try to get it done tonight before you can get out here. But if not, I'll give you a ring.
Yeah, we'll both shoot on 3, right? And then you just shoot on 2.
There you go.
But yeah, so you'd have to have some history with the deer to really be able to know him. I mean, is this a deer? If I'm chasing a deer in my home state, I probably know him really well. Like I'm already going to know, like, if he's in this field and he's going to be here at dark and he hasn't moved off this field at dark, he's probably happy here and he's going to bed here. He's going to bed in this field, eat all night, and get up and walk into this little thicket. But if at sunup, or if at half an hour before dark, he's already out of that field and 2 fields over. I mean, who knows where he's going to be? You got to figure out, you got to figure out where he's going to bed over there. Is he going to come back? But if he's hanging out in that pocket, he might be there in the night. I would hunt I would figure out how to kill him in that woods in the morning. But that would come down to having really intimate knowledge of that. I think it's harder to kill one on a morning hunt when you have seen him in the evening, because now he's got 10, 12 hours to cover ground and dick around. Who knows where he's going to be?
Yeah.
But when you can put one to bed and you watch him walk into a thicket, that's when you can really cheat in on them. And that's when you have to know the bedding grounds, know the other deer, know where everything beds. And that's when you got to be risky and take chances. And, I love killing them that way, putting them to bed. And I'll literally call my wife and be like, I cannot get the kids off the school bus. The buck I'm after, literally, I glassed him this morning. He's in the pines. And when he comes out of there, the wind is going to be a southwest wind, and I'm going to drill him right here. I'm killing this deer tonight. I would say it's like 70-80% of the chance. My knives are sharp. The trailer's hooked up on the four-wheeler, like I'm killing this deer. And she'll be like, yeah, he said he was going to kill that tonight. But I don't say that very often. I mean, normally I don't go for the throats, but if you have that scenario and you bet him up, that's the way to kill him. So if I were you, I would really try and pinwheel where he is, sit tight on him, and then slip in and cut his throat on an evening hunt.
Yeah.
Because to follow him up on a morning is tough. They can cover so much ground.
Yeah, and fortunately in this case, I do know the deer pretty well. I watched him a lot last year, passed on him last year. I've got a pretty darn good idea of the general zone he's bedding in most of the time. So tonight I'm kind of doing, like, in the first 2 nights, because I saw him moving daylight out to this food source that I originally didn't think he would come out to, but I saw him. I was like, all right, I'll take a couple easy shots. It's low impact, starting the outside. And now today I'm going to push in deeper and go inside closer to where I think he will be bedded. So we'll see how it goes. We got this great cold
smart.
front.
That's cool. That's smart. I always tell people to cheat their way in, and some guys don't get it. But when I try not to break up a wood, go into a woods very much. I really try and hunt on the periphery of them. But when you do, a lot of times I'll go 10 feet into a woods, like when I'm trying to sneak in on one like that, unless I really know it well. But especially on a morning hunt, like I just tiptoe into the woods, 10 feet, hang a stand. And then if I'm not seeing what I want, I'll go 30 more yards in. And that's smart. It's a lot of work, and a lot of guys don't want to do it. They want to tromp in there and be right in the heart of it. But, the more information you get on that deer, that's what's going to kill them.
Yeah. Now, how would this be, or would this be any different if you were hunting in Ohio or Kansas? Or how would your strategy start differing when you went to one of these different states, as we're, somewhere in October?
Yeah. So, when you're hunting your home state, you know the ground extremely well, and you know who can and can't be on the ground, or, like, okay, man, I got to go for his throat because everybody's in here. Or, hey, this is a little pocket that I know nobody's hunting here. I got time. When you go out of state, I pretty much just hunt walk-in or public land. I do have a couple places over the years I've gotten, especially in Kansas, that are great private pieces. But they pretty much almost give anybody permission anyways. But, there's a different aggressiveness that I admittedly turn on when I hunt out of state. And I wouldn't call it a desperation, but my hunting style has really changed. I think everybody changes. And I should probably touch base on that. When you were talking about scouting, like when I was a kid, I scouted like a maniac. And really for the past 15 years, I've scouted really hard. I'll know where there's 6 or 7 shooters. Now that I have kids and a business and soccer practices with the kids and all this stuff, like that's out the window. I do not scout like a maniac anymore, but I don't have to. I know where a good deer is going to be, and I know that all I got to do is glass them up, and I know the ground. Like I know how I'm going to kill them. It's really not that hard here to get them killed anymore. I've gotten extremely aggressive. I used to wait and be patient. I'm going to try and get this deer. I hope he comes here. And this is a good area. I used to just kill them with patience. And now I'm literally like, I can't hunt. I can't, today's Friday. I can't hunt again until Wednesday. Like, if I think that deer is somewhere, I'm going to kill him. And I have a great confidence in the fact that now I'm either going to kill him or, oh, well, I blew him out of here. I don't know how many racks. I mean, I have antlers everywhere. I have tons of good kills under my belt. So if I blow one out of there, I don't really care. Whereas years ago, I would almost make myself throw up if I blew a big buck out. So I really think hunting with that mindset, like not caring, like like not that I don't care, but it's not going to be the end of my life. This is not going to be a big blemish in my hunting career if I bump this buck or if he runs over and somebody else kills him. It doesn't hurt me anymore. It's no big deal. And all that's done has made me even more deadly because now I'm like, yep, I don't care. I got a good feeling about it. I'm going after this deer. He's in trouble. And when you go into it with that attitude, it's kind of like, truthfully, it's like killing deer or anything in life. It's kind of like dating girls. One time I was in a bar when I wasn't even legal to drink, and these two beautiful girls came in, and all the guys in the bar, my buddies were like, man, we were like, nobody went and talked to them. And I made a joke. I'm like, I'm going to go just flirt them up and tell them I'm gorgeous. And I just went over and flirted with these girls and talked to them and, was way over my head with these two beautiful women. I think I was like 18. I shouldn't even been in a bar. And nobody talks to these girls because they're so hot. I did something that, I was aggressive about it. I just went over and talked to them. And at 18, I learned nobody's talking to these beautiful women. And truthfully, I've always dated beautiful women because I don't think anybody's talking to them. And people are inconfident to go talk to them. And killing deer is the same way. If I know there's a big deer, he's in trouble. I'm going to go kill him. And other people tiptoe around it, or they, their tactics are weak. Know what you're going to say to these pretty girls and freaking go for it. And the same thing with a deer. Know what the wind is, and have some balls and go in there and get them killed.
That's amazing.
Do it with some conviction and some confidence and some evidence to back up your what you're doing. And it works. I mean, I really thought my hunting career was kind of going to go downhill because I wasn't spending the time that I used to. Dude, it's easier for me to kill deer now than it ever has been because I just don't care. I mean, I do care. I shouldn't saying that in a sarcastic way. Like if I don't kill 140-inch deer this year, and I have piles of them. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
I want to kill one, but it doesn't really matter, and that takes the edge off.
So what are the things that you are doing when you say like, I don't care, so I'm going to be aggressive because you don't have the time, you're going to just go for it. Like, what's an example of something you're doing now that you would call the aggressive, go in for the throat kind of move? I might think in my head, it's like, well, like what I'm doing tonight. I know that I'm pushing in much farther into the property than I usually would early. And I know that the wind direction, like some deer will win me. Like it's inevitable some deer are going to win me. But I believe that based off everything I know about this deer, based off all the history, I think there's a damn good chance that he'll use this wind in a certain way, which will put him by me. And either it's going to be, I'm going to kill him, or, I'm going to blow some deer and maybe he'll do something different and maybe he'll win me too. But I've got a good feeling like I'm going into the kill zone. High risk, high reward kind of situation. Like, what are those situations for you? Now you're doing this kind of thing. What does that look like?
Yeah, 100%. And that's the right attitude to have. I always say like high risk, high reward, and I'm 100% behind that. However, I pad my bets extremely well. Like, I will go into a spot and say, I'm either going to blow them out or kill them. But truthfully, I already know so much about this deer and so much about this area. Like, I'm probably going to kill him. Like, I don't think, I'm trying to be cool and say, it doesn't matter. I'm going to, high risk, high reward. It is a high risk, but it's extremely well calculated risk. Like, I wouldn't make that risk if the wind was bad. I'd be like, nope, I can't go after this deer tonight. And you get that too. And like, I don't want to preach to people like, just go in and go after them. Like, if everything's perfect, definitely go in and go after them. When those two girls walk in the bar, if they have two dudes with them, do not go over and say the things that you were going to say to them. Wait till the girls are alone and then say it. And it's the same thing with the deer. So I had a guy show me a picture of a drop tine buck. This was quite a while ago. I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, and I had glassed the deer. He's a really nice, I think he was 4.5, which for us is, I mean, that's a dinosaur around here. People, they just don't live to that age. And he was a good deer. I wanted him to live another year, and he was living in this pocket that not a lot of people had permission on. And I was not going to kill him. And this dude shows me the picture of this deer, and he has permission on this ground. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's great. And he's like, I'm going to kill this deer. And I thought, oh man. So it sounds terrible, but it's like, screw it. I'm going to, like, if this deer shows up where I think he is, this guy's going to blow him out of this woods. And of course, I go and I just glassed, and of course that deer showed up that the first evening I looked for him because this guy blew him out. So it's like, I'm going to put this deer to sleep. I watched him that whole evening. In the morning I went in and put that deer to sleep, just like we were talking. And it's like, I'm killing this deer. Like, this deer knows that now the pressure, everybody came into the woods. It was the opening day. I think I killed him the second day. And that was the thing. It's like, I'm killing this deer. And I hung a stand for him, which I don't like hanging stands. Like, I'm always amazed how guys will hang stands in July, and they're all proud that they got all their stands trimmed and everything. And it's like, okay, that's great for the rut. Like, if you put it in a great rut spot, but like, they're hanging these off the wall stands. And it's like, man, you guys must know more than me, because it seems like a lot of times, like, just a buck will happen to come out, like, just out of habit. He'll come out this trail, and this would be the perfect tree. And so a lot of times I'll hang a stand for a deer, and it sucks because you're screwing up you're sweating, you're hanging a stand quick, but if you're efficient about it, it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have any shooting lanes trimmed, but that's when you're going for his throat. But I would only do that with that knowledge and that information. And I figured, you know what, I'm either going to kill this deer or blow him out of here. And I killed him. So that was great. But it also came down, I knew the deer, I knew his escape patterns, and I knew where he was living. He was going back between these two woods. And I figured once these guys hit this woods, this guy was hunting them, his buddy was hunting them. I mean, they were all going to try and kill this deer. Well, they all went in there and completely blew this deer out of the woods. And once they did that, they pushed him over to, actually, they can hunt where I killed him too, but they pushed him over there and I killed him.
Huh.
But it came with knowledge. It wasn't like, and I didn't have a stand there. If I wouldn't have taken that risk, I wouldn't have had that opportunity.
Right.
There's a million other stories that I went for deer and blew them out. So I don't want you to think that every time I go for them, I get them, but I would say it's really probably 70% of the time. If I decide like I'm going to go for it, I'm going to push the envelope. I'm going to get this deer. You get them, but it comes with a calculated risk. There's knowledge behind it. I'm not just going to go sit in my lucky stand. And if I don't have a reason, like I don't know, our season's been open. What is today, the 4th? So it's our 4th day. I haven't even been hunting yet because I haven't found anything worth shooting. I'm not hunting deer. I want to hunt a deer. And when I go sit, like if I'm sitting in a tree stand, I'm after something. Otherwise, I'm just sitting in what I always call observation stands. They're skyscrapers. They're really high. And usually they're in spots that I can see 3 or 4 different either fields or travel corridors or something. And I'm getting education. And then once I realize like, oh man, this is the place, I got to get in there. He's going to bed. Then I slip in and go for those. Yeah. And I think a lot of guys are like that. Like, I don't think you see that on the TV shows and stuff because they can't do that on a TV show. And they don't have to. They're hunting, mega beautiful river bottoms and stuff. And I hate them for that, but we all hate them for that. But if I was a multimillionaire, I would buy beautiful river bottoms and invite all my buddies. Yeah. And I always say that. People will be like, oh, hey, that show's ridiculous. And it's like, yeah, it is ridiculous. But if I was a multimillionaire, I would actually own a beautiful river bottom and I would enjoy watching 170-inch deer run past me. So
that'd be
I
fun.
give the guys credit for that. But but that's why you don't see that on those TV shows. Yeah. You can't hunt that way.
One of these aggressive moves of sorts, one of the things that I hear from so many of the best deer hunters out there is trying to hunt a buck when he has the wind in his favor to a degree. And we talked about wind a little bit last time on our last podcast conversation a couple of years ago, but I want to dive into this just a little bit further because it's something that I'm trying to implement myself more and more. Early on, I was always obsessed with the wind, but always obsessed with how do I hunt so that there's the very least chance of any deer winding me. I need the wind as safe as possible. I was always obsessing over that. But then you start seeing more and more, and this is not a rule, but it seems like maybe more often than not, these bucks that get old and big are typically smart about how they move around a landscape. And they like to, now again, not saying they always do, but it seems like a lot of times they like to have the wind or use the wind in some way. So maybe that means they're moving into the wind or quartering to the wind, or the wind's, coming across their face as they head into a food source or when they go into bed. That seems to be something that I'm trying to pay attention to more, and a lot of other guys are too. So this is all to say, as I'm thinking about when you want to hunt a spot, you want to try to find a way that the wind is seemingly that a deer would want to approach this area because he thinks that he's able to smell what's ahead of him, but also somehow just cut the corner of it with your wind so that he doesn't wind you, even though he thinks he's getting into an area safely. And so I'm trying 100%. To do that. Yeah, so it's okay. So one more thing though.
But that's I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm just going to add one more addendum to this, one little thing, and then I want to hear your thoughts. So that sounds really good, but every time I ever try it, it always seems way easier said than done because you get a predicted wind of, let's say, a west-southwest wind or whatever. And if it stays and it really is west-southwest, or if it really is west, whatever I want, if it's really west and I set up just perfectly, cut in the angle, and I know the buck well, and I think he's going to come from just here, it'll be fine. But then so many times you get what they call a west wind, but it's west-southwest for 5 minutes, and then it's west-northwest for 10 minutes, and then it's due north for 30 seconds, and then it's west for the rest of the time. It's always moving around. You can never get, it just seems like to me, it's so hard to get a perfectly consistent as forecasted wind. So how do you, if this is something you do, how do you think about cutting the corner on a deer, being aggressive, but then also knowing like, man, Mother Nature's finicky and it's never quite as you expect?
Right. Yeah. And you're spot on with all of that. I'm not very savvy on on all the apps with the winds and all that jazz. I literally go out and check the wind. I love aviation, so I have a wind sock, and I watch the wind sock. I watch the tree leaves, and you can't bank on whatever the phone tells you it's going to be. It is amazing how accurate it is, but that's where it comes down to hunting your home ground. You've got to know that, okay, when I step outside of my house, there's a big woods here. That wind is actually going to show me southwest. But when I get down where I want to hunt 4 miles from here, there's a big rolling hill, and then there's a hill that comes up heavy on the east, and it seems like when the wind hits that, no matter what the southwest wind is at home, it seems to blow out of the south more because it swirls off that. So It's funny how wherever you are, the wind is going to be dictated by the surroundings. The corn will change it. So if there's corn up, like I like hunting fields, wood edges with the corn up. I can't hunt some of this stuff when the corn comes off. It changes the wind. So being a wind geek is extremely important, and having balls and saying, I know this deer is going to be bedded, knowing the ground and knowing like he's going to be bedded here. This is how he's going to come out. And I know that all these little bucks are over here. So I know that this buck is not going to want to deal with them. He's going to cut this edge. I'm going for it. Now you're going to spook all those little bucks. Good. I don't want them there anyway. Like I don't want to deal with them. And there's other times it's like, man, once these deer get past me, they're going to spook. I'm okay with that one time. Like I will do that just that time I'm going to kill them. And I've killed a lot of deer where it's like, man, every doe that walks out, they spook. And I like try and spook them. I'm literally like shaking my hand, like run, like
get them out of here fast.
You know and I want them to like leave and go far enough away that that buck doesn't see them standing there.
Yeah.
And there's one spot in particular that I've killed 2 good deer coming out of this corner. And it's literally that. It's like every deer that came out. And I'm almost like anxious, like sick to my stomach that I'm spooking these deer until that buck comes out and you can see him chewing his cud. And it's like, yes, he has no This deer has no idea. I'm done. And look, you almost get this arrogance. I get giddy. I'm literally like, this deer is done. Like, I got it. I never say I got it until I got it, but it's like, yeah, you're not getting out of here alive. It's going to take a miracle. But that comes with hunting, not just hunting for a long time, but hunting that area for a long time, and having tons of experience and screwing things up. But when you screw it up, figure out why you screwed it up and what went wrong there, and put it in your little book of knowledge for next time. And you get enough of those little notes, the odds are in your favor. But taking those chances is good, but it has to be calculated. I feel bad. Like, now a bunch of people are going to run out, and I know you have a huge podcast following. I'm afraid like a bunch of guys are going to screw up their ground and hate me.
Like you're right.
Be calculated.
Calculation, yeah, balancing. And there's certain times to go for the home run, and then there's a whole bunch of other times where it's better to be safe, scout, glass. And so you're right. It definitely comes down to making those calculated decisions. Now, I guess with that in mind, what are the things going on in your head that help you determine, should I go for the home run or should I play it safe? Like, I got to believe it's probably a mix of what you saw, like the intel you have. It's maybe a mix of what are the conditions, and then maybe it's a mixture of like, how much time do I have, or what's the hunting pressure? Is that right? Are there other things?
Yeah, you're 100% on. I mean, at this point in my life, it's like, all right, can I, if I see a big one, I am going to be extremely aggressive on that deer, because I don't, you used to hunt. I would literally hunt every day of the hunting season, years ago. I enjoy it. I just can't do that anymore. And now I look at it and it's like, man, I think about how much time I would rather take 2 days off of work and hunt like a maniac once I find a big one, and do as much research and kill them in 2 days than to take 2 weeks off. Like, a lot of these guys take 2-3 weeks off to hunt their home state. And it's like, that's ridiculous. Like, you should really be able to get this deer killed. I would rather go 110% for a little bit of time and get them killed than to go mediocre pace. And that has a lot to do with it. Like, if I think he's in a killable spot, I'm definitely going for it. However, there's been, Joe had made a phenomenal comment in that previous episode. What was it, episode 200 or something that you had done about, and I'll screw it up. I won't be able to quote it, but he had made a comment that really struck home with me. And he's like, he made a comment about there's a spot in his woods, or there'll be a spot in the woods that it just has all this great sign, and there's trails everywhere, and there's rubs and scrapes, and it's just perfect if I could just get down in there. But I know that's an unhuntable spot. Like, it's never right there. The entrance and escape is wrong. The wind switches all the time, and all you're going to do is ruin it. Yes, learn that. Learn that discipline, that this is an unhunt. Like, there are spots that you don't try and hunt that. Don't even put a camera in there. You're just screwing it up. Stay out of that. It might only be a 100-yard radius. Nothing is right in there. Like, you can't attack them in there. Don't let them know that you're in the area. Stay out of that and just hunt the periphery and do it right, and you're going to kill stuff. But people don't do that. They see all this sign and they're like, oh my God, I'm putting a stand in here. And it's like, you just literally ruined this woods. But the only good thing for somebody like me is, once I see that stand, I know, good, this guy just he's going to blow these deer out of here. I'm going to hunt the escape routes. And people literally funnel deer for me in all these places I hunt, because not that they're stupid, but they're not paying attention to the cause and effect of what they're doing. So they'll ruin the best spot in the woods, and then they come to me on the escape routes, and it's like perfect, and you drill them. So knowing when to go for it, I mean, it's kind of like, when a poker player knows when to make a bluff. I mean, you just got to know it, and it comes from experience. And you got to go out there, and whatever you do every night. Like, I remember making notes, because I think Dwight Chu or somebody had, said that, like, I don't know if it was Dwight, but somebody they wrote down like everything, every day's hunt. And I did that for like a year. And then I was like, I've never went back and read any of those notes, but I can remember every hunt. Pretty much every wind direction, and I can tell you every deer I've ever shot, how far the distance was. Like, you can't get that stuff out of your mind. And when you have all that recollection, it's just knowledge, but don't be afraid to look back on it in your mind and be like, yeah, I remember hunting this and I could never get away with getting in here. Well, take that into account. Like, that should teach you something. Like, every time I go in here, I blow deer out and I've never killed a deer in here. Stay out of there. There are spots like that you can't hunt. And when Joe made that comment, it was like, yeah, this dude's a killer. He knows to stay out of that, and he knows to just let them feel comfortable and let their guard down, and they're going to get killed. And, I like the idea that deer are these smart old deer and all this stuff. They're not. They're animals. They have great instincts, and they're very habitual. A buck is definitely going to put his nose in the wind, I think, and he's definitely good. How many times have you seen a good buck step into a field, but not quite into it? He's still got, all the briars and brush standing right in front of him. Uh-huh. And he just stands there for 45 minutes, and it's like, dude, step out. That's his habit. He's a lazy buck. And I think he's gotten old because he happens to not like to go out into the field until it's dark. He's not smart. That's his habit. And that habit has gotten him old. So once you figure that, okay, he's going to come out here, you figure out how to beat his system. And it seems to work. It's just a thought process.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of you guys are familiar with the old hunting tradition of eating, some organ, the heart or a chunk of liver off the first animal you kill. I had that when I was a little kid, and it was a big deal. Organ meats were always prized by frontier people who knew the importance of getting a lot of different minerals and nutrients. And as often is the case, those guys were onto something, because organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. And you can get the same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil, made exclusively from regeneratively raised, grass-fed, and finished cattle. Heart and Soil's unique freeze-drying process means all those important nutrients are trapped in, ensuring you experience every one of the benefits of nature's superfood in a clean, convenient, taste-free capsule. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And make sure to use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase. That's heartandsoil.co. Use the code MeatEater. You ever get that feeling you're stuck inside staring at screens and a primal urge kicks in? You crave wide open spaces, fresh air, the chance to connect with the land? Well, maybe it's time to find your own piece of the wild, but searching for property can be a maze. That's where Land.com comes in. They got millions of listings across the country, from mountain ranches to hidden fishing holes. Their search tools are like a seasoned guide helping you narrow down what you want. Land.com isn't just about buying and selling. It's about finding a place to hunt, fish, explore, or simply sit by a campfire and listen to the crickets. So head over to Land.com today to turn one day into today, because trust me, there's nothing quite like the feeling of standing on your own piece of earth.
Oh, a random comment you made a little while back ago, I just want to get a little more information on before we move forward. You were talking about wind and how different local things on your property might change wind, and you got to know how all these things impact it. You said that standing corn changes the wind for you, and when the corn comes out, that changes things again. How do you see standing corn or cornfields getting cleared change wind direction?
It's not like I could put a science behind it and say, when the corn is up, it definitely deadens the wind, or when the corn is up, there's this one spot I hunt that has this nice rolling hill, and there's a certain spot down on this hedgerow that whether there's corn or not, there doesn't seem to ever be any wind. It's like this little dead zone. When the corn is up, that spot is huge. Like, it's 100 yards. You get 100 yards in there. But when the corn is off, there's like this 20-yard pocket that it just always seems to be dead. And just paying attention as I'm walking places, like, man, the wind was just beating me in the back, and now it's extremely dead here. I've taken the time to walk back up a hill before and then been like, yeah, the wind is still blowing hard right here. And then walk back down, and it's like, it's not blowing hard here. So just observing those little things, there's just different places that I can't explain why it is, but that's how it is. And I've been observant to know, like, the wind is going to do this in this spot. When it's when it's doing this, when it's a north wind up here, it's going to be a northwest wind in this spot. And that's actually another thing that I'm a maniac for is odd winds. Man, if I get an east wind, something is going to die. Like today was actually an east wind. I have to go check the wind now, but it was an east wind here, and man, east winds drive me wild because there's so many spots that I can't hunt because I set everything up for a southwest wind. But man, when you get an east wind, especially when a deer, in my opinion, beds with the southwest wind, when he goes in and definitely does put his nose in the wind, and then all of a sudden the wind changes up, he still wants to go out to where he had planned on going. And if the wind is at his back and he hasn't been pressured bad, he's going to walk out there. I mean, he's still smelling the wind all around him. He's going to use his eyes and his hearing to make sure that everything ahead of him is okay. He's going to feel very confident that he's going to be able to see everything and hear everything. And he's going to be able to smell everything behind him. So they walk with their, in my opinion, somebody out there is going to be like, oh, this guy's stupid. They don't walk with their, nose not in the wind. But I'm here to tell you, they walk with their nose, with the wind at their back. They have wonderful eyesight and wonderful vision. And if I can catch an odd wind like that, if there's a big one, that's a great hunt an odd wind. Like, and when you hang stand sets, if I have a good thicket or something, and I know like, okay, they tend to come out here, they tend to come out there. If I'm pinning a deer down, I'll hang a southwest stand for them. But if I can sneak in there and hang an east wind stand, oh man, I will hang an east wind stand. And as soon as the wind changes, I'm in that stand. And that's when I'm actually hoping to get lucky, and have a good bedding area exposed to me from an angle that I usually can't get in on. And that's so exciting. I get giddy. It's like, man, when there's an east wind, it's like, oh my God, I cannot wait. I hope this doesn't change. But the discipline level is when you get in that east wind stand and you're in early and everything is good, and then that wind switches and it starts blowing into the bedding grounds, get out. Like, don't be that guy that just sits there and then lets the scent blow in there for the next 2 hours. Just know that the gig is up and get out and recircle and use that night as a scouting tool and see what happens. Because a lot of guys just sit there and it's like, nope, the gig is up, get out. And I've done it too. I've sat there and then it's like, I screwed this up. I should have left.
Wish I hadn't done that.
So,
So you mentioned that, lots of times a buck will like to use the wind, but on occasion they will walk with the wind to their backs to get in certain spots. You've talked about that lots of times there might be a big old buck that hangs up at the edge of a field. There's certain things you've seen over and over your years of chasing the biggest, oldest bucks around. Are there any other, now I know these aren't rules, there's nothing, like if there's anything that's true about big mature buck, is that they're all different, but are there any other high-level trends that you've kind of seen over the years as far as what makes a mature buck different than a young buck, as far as their behavior, what they do? Any other like key things that you're always thinking, well, a mature buck's probably going to do this, a mature buck's probably going to do that help guide you?
A couple things. For instance, they're not, I would say these big bucks are nocturnal and this and that. I think they are observant to things that they don't like to be bothered. And I think that's a big thing that we like instant gratification, especially with these trail cameras and stuff. And I think this applies to like my home state and some of these high pressure states more than it would in other states. Going in and out of the woods and screwing them up and driving your four-wheeler, checking your trail cameras, even every 2 weeks. It's like, dude, just stay out of there. Like, I literally don't put trail cameras in any, I don't really run them too much, but if I do, I don't put them on food sources too much. Like, I try and put them like where they might cross the road just to see what's in the area. Cause I don't want to they know that you're in there. Like if you walk into my house with muddy boots, like I'm going to know, like, geez, these aren't my boot tracks. Like somebody's in my house. And I'm pretty sure when you go walking through their stuff and keep checking stuff, like they're onto that. And I've noticed, I'll get a picture of a doe profile or broadside, and then all of a sudden it's looking at the camera, and then all of a sudden its nose is on the camera, and then all of a sudden it's walking away. And it's like, yeah, that deer knew that camera is there. Like, I'm not a big fan of that type of stuff. So that's something, I don't know, it's probably not a little trick to killing big bucks. But the other thing I was going to say is I can't believe how many people, like if you have the day off and you have the day to hunt, and it is hard, but especially during the rut, like do not go home, like hunt. If you're in a good spot and the wind is good and you are out to hunt, and especially if it's the rut and you're in a big buck state, I've shot a lot of good deer between 11 and 1 o'clock. They're on their feet, especially if they're not pressured or they're chasing does. But I can't believe there's actually a soybean field by my house, and we will see deer at noon. I'll just pop around this corner, and there's this kind of hidden little draw, and there's just does out there. There'll be 10 does out there in the middle of the day, you know. And people, a lot of times, it's like, oh, it's 9 o'clock. I'm getting out of my stand. It's like, nah, you might want to sit there till 11. I would at least push a little bit harder. Like, stay off your phone. I'm kind of bad about it too, but yeah. I know people, it's like, you got to be kidding me. There's this one spot I hunt, and it's a hedgerow, and then there's just 2 huge fields behind it, and there's a drainage ditch, and then there's another hedgerow. And I've glassed this one guy that is a young guy. He hunts this far hedgerow, and I glassed, I don't know how many deer come out of this hedgerow. He had his freaking head down in his phone. They all went behind him. I watched, it was gun season. I know this kid would have shot everything that moved. He never saw any of those deer. They couldn't have been 30 yards behind him. But he was on his phone the whole time. And if I would have had a camera, I would have loved to have recorded that. But, you know, if you're at work, like, stay focused on your job, like, work. If you're hunting, like, stay focused on the task at hand. And, like, I get on my phone every now and then, or text guys or something, but man, like, focus on the task at hand.
Yeah, that's key, and it's easy these days. There's so many opportunities for distraction with those phones in your pocket. So that's a good reminder. Yeah. It's definitely a good reminder. Yeah. I was bit in the ass on that one once, so I know what you're saying.
Yeah. But
go ahead.
As far as big buck tips, I mean, it's tough to say, like, oh, you know, look for this. But, you know, one thing you could do is pay attention to how the crops change and how the deer change too. Like guys are literally a place I hunt. Somebody had a doe and heat scent wick out already. And it's kind of like, geez, what are you doing? You know, I hate to be rude, but it's like that. This is not, you're going to kill an immature deer off that. It's oddly curious of what this is. And yeah. I think you're going to tip the deer off that, okay, some idiots here already putting scent wicks up. So that would be a big buck tip. Like, don't do that.
Yeah, that makes sense. One kind of not off the wall topic, but we're kind of pivoting from what we've been talking about here. We've talked a lot about, you know, how to know when to go in for the kill, how to find them, how to glass them up, how to determine how a mature buck's going to behave versus an immature buck. Doing all this stuff, killing a big mature buck every year, all of this takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of time. I think for a lot of us, we can obsess over it. How do you think about that side of your life, being a successful hunter, and then balancing your family? Because I know you've got a family, you've got daughters. How do you manage those things and try to keep it in balance or make it all work somehow?
Yeah, that's an extremely important point, and a huge point, and that's a point that I've excelled at extremely well. Anywhere I go, people are like, "Man, what does your wife say?" And first of all, don't ever date somebody that is not into hunting. It's not going to work. So step number one, if your girlfriend is complaining, like, just move on. She's never going to be happy, and just get it over with.
There you go.
But no, that's a fact. Like, if your wife, if your girlfriend does not like something that you are passionate about, like, just get it over with. There's tons of cool chicks out there. Marry a good woman would be step one, and that's the biggest step. But that's a great point, because I have personally, especially when my kids were little, pushed the envelope of wringing myself out, like mentally, physically, financially, where it's not even fun. And I've set myself up for failure. One year in Kansas, I think it might've been the first year, probably the second year I hunted Kansas. it was a big deal to me to make this work. Financially, my business that I had just started was tiny. I don't even know if I had actually started my business. I was broke. We had a brand new baby at home. This tag, I don't know how much the tags were then, $600 or something. I mean, $600 might as well have been like 10 grand to me. It was everything to me. The whole trip was exhausting. I found a really good buck, and I just wore myself out. And I knew that when I got home, like, money was going to be tight, and my wife never complained, but she was struggling at home trying to take care of the baby and that you cannot do. Like, I was not ready for, and I actually missed that deer, the deer that I finally got a shot at. I got screwed on that deer so many times, by other people, but I ended up getting a shot at this deer, and it was so desperate for me to kill this deer and accomplish the goal that I botched something that I'm really good at killing things. Like, I understand when to move, how to move, when to take a shot, when not to shoot. And I did something, like, the killing part is never a problem for me. And I botched it. And it came down to not having my home life perfect. When you leave if you're leaving for a hunt, or if hunting season is coming, you better work like a maniac and have money banked so that the heat bill isn't a problem. The money isn't a problem. You've got to bank. If you have $3,000 a month in bills, make sure you have $6,000 set aside, or whatever. It might only be $500, but mentally be okay that I'm going hunting and it doesn't matter. Make sure you have your crap around the house picked up. Make sure the lawn is mowed. Make sure your wife is in a good mood and she's happy and she's okay that you're going away. I always say this, like, I try and set up the babysitters and make sure the kids are taken care of and they've got rides from here to there. My wife truthfully kind of does that, but I make sure that she's got it done, because when you call home and she's like, this is a pain in the ass and I've got to figure out how to get, cricket to this practice and my other daughter to that practice. It takes away from your thought process. That stuff's important, and a lot of guys take that for granted, including myself. I did that hunt, and that hunt, like, broke me. I hated hunting. I was pretty pissed. It wasn't, I failed, and I don't like failing. And I remember after that thinking, like, I'm not going to put myself in that situation. Like, if I can't, I didn't go the next year because I couldn't afford to. And I just worked like a maniac. And now when I go hunting, if the money isn't set aside and my wife isn't happy and things aren't taken care of, I don't need to go. And it's a good feeling because, like, I have more good animals killed than probably anybody deserves to have in a lifetime already. So I could hang up my hat from hunting and have just a phenomenal do-it-yourself career. People would be like, wow, that's amazing. So if I don't get one, it's not a big deal. The pressure's off, and it's really good to take the pressure off yourself. I like killing big stuff. I don't want to go somewhere and not kill something. But if I don't, it's not a big, like, I'm not worried about it. I really enjoy it sounds corny, but I enjoy the journey now. When I was younger, it was more of the destination. I had to show success. And having a good wife and a stable, happy kids that's huge. Like, if my kids are on the phone, and a couple of times they've been like, Daddy, come home, especially elk hunting. They're like, come home. And it's like, oh, you're breaking my heart. But I'm not afraid to tell them either. Listen, Daddy works hard. I work hard for you. And this is I love this stuff. I want you to be proud of me, and I want you to cheer for me. I don't want to hear you just crying. You are a good kid, and I do everything I can do to make you happy. This makes me happy, and someday when you're old enough, you are coming with me, okay? So be happy for me. Don't be crying on the phone. Tell me you're proud of me, and tell me to kill big things. And my girls, those kids will be like, Daddy, you kill a big one, and they're great. And now they're old enough that they don't even need that speech. Like, they're cheering for me. And that is just, it's the best. That's how it has to be. But it wasn't always that way. I strung myself out like anybody. So when you get your ducks in a row, that's huge. If your girlfriend is complaining, or, if you have a girlfriend and she's bitching and complaining about that, I would literally just say, look, here's the deal. It's something I really care about. If there's something you really care about, I will support you and help you do it. But don't bring me down complaining about something I'm passionate about. It's never going to change. So get that out of the way before you go dating somebody, no matter what it is, if you're into cars or whatever, like if somebody's complaining about something you love, like you might want to change directions.
Yeah. That's some wise words to have at the front end of a relationship.
Yeah, see,
Absolutely.
I'm going to end up, everybody's going to end up overpressuring their deer because they're going to go for the deer's throat, and they're going to end up breaking up with their girlfriend. This is a hell of a podcast. It's a hell of a podcast you're putting together.
We're gonna title this one "The Home Wrecker" with Jesse Coots.
That's great. Yeah, that could be true. However, the funny thing is, I kill a lot of big animals, and I have a wonderful family life. So there again, it works for me. It might not work for you, but this is what works for me. Yeah.
That's great, Jesse.
The home wrecker. Yeah. When all my buddies hear this, they're going to be like, "Oh, home wrecker! There's a real shocker."
So we got to wrap this one up, Jesse, because I need to go run a couple errands for my family and then run off into the woods. Do you have any final last words or things you want to share with the folks before we sign off here?
Yeah, I didn't get a big itinerary sheet from you, and I wasn't sure. And I sat down before, and I was like, what are the important things to me that if you want to kill big deer? And I wrote a couple things down, and we didn't touch base on them. And one of the things I was going to say, if you want to kill big deer, like we had said, you got to hunt where big deer are. And once you're hunting where big deer are, do not shoot little deer. You will never kill big deer. Even if you're like, well, I didn't get one this year. Stop shooting little deer. If you shoot little deer, be happy that you're shooting little deer. Don't cry that you're not shooting big deer. And I think the biggest tip a guy could have, especially a young guy, well, anybody, if you really want to get good at hunting and killing big deer, you have to learn to be a killer. I think you should start out. I mean, when I was a kid, I was very fortunate that my parents weren't around much. I had BB guns and bow and arrows and slingshots. Sparrows were not safe. Woodchucks. I mean, the neighbor's horse farm paid me to shoot every woodchuck. I learned how to sneak up on stuff. I learned how to move. Being a killer is probably the biggest asset you can have. And if, a lot of guys are like, I've shot 10 deer with a bow. And it's like, that's great. But you need to kill 10 doe a year with a bow. And there were years where I would get, and my home state has liberal freaking doe tags. And I got tons of doe tags and just shot the daylights out of them. For 15 years, I probably killed 10 deer a year. And then you hunt other states. I mean, by the time I was done, I was killing 15 or 20 deer a year with a bow. That makes you so confident and so good at hunting that when the pressure of a big buck is on, this is something you've done 200 times. Like, this is not a big deal. I'm going to slip an arrow through this buck's chest. And when he gets to this pocket, I know when to move and when not to move. And if he gets through that pocket, I don't care, because I know I'm going to shoot him quartering away when he gets to that pocket. Whereas when you don't have that experience under your belt, everything's a panic. So if you really want to be a good hunter, hunt woodchucks with a bow and arrow, hunt rabbits with a bow and arrow, shoot as many does. Don't shoot any, even gun season, I shoot them with a bow and arrow. Just become proficient with the bow and arrow and shoot everything that moves. I mean, when I drive past a horse pasture and look at horses, it sounds morbid, but I literally look at every angle and figure out how I would shoot that horse. And you have to have that mindset. I know it sounds evil, but like everything is a target. And if you're not thinking that way, you're out of the groove. And if you can get nuisance permits, or you can get, if your state allows transferable doe tags, get as many doe tags as you can. And before you try and really kill big bucks, like, kill everything in your path. Learn to be a good hunter and hunt and kill everything. And I really think you should I cut all my own deer. I know a deer's body inside and out. I know if I hit them here, exactly what organ is there and what tendon is there and what the cause and effect is. I think that stuff really matters. It matters to me. It's helped me a ton. So those would be some of my other tips is be a murderer, be a killer. I know it's not correct to say that you should harvest deer, but I don't harvest them. I kill things. I kill things and I butcher it and I put it in my freezer and I feed my family. I'm not harvesting anything. I'm killing deer. And I think to be a proficient big buck killer, you have to learn how to kill everything.
I get what you're saying.
That would be my pointer on that. But I could go on all day, and I really appreciate you having me on. I'm honored to be on. I'm not really a podcast guy, but I've heard so many good things since I was on your last one. I had no idea what a wonderful podcast this is, and how highly people think of you and your podcast across the country. So I'm honored to be on it and be a part of it.
Well, thank you, Jesse. I really appreciate it too. And I think you share a lot of things that will help folks, and you don't mince words. And yeah, a few people might not like that, but I think a lot of people will appreciate and learn from it too. And that's a cool thing. So thank you for that. And good luck with the rest of your 2019 hunting season.
You got it, my friend. Thank you. And keep in touch, and I'm sure we'll catch up again.
I'll call you tonight after I shoot that big one. All right.
Do that. Call me. I'm looking forward to it, my friend. All right. And if you don't shoot him, call me and tell me where he was and what he was doing. We'll have to, we will literally hash this out. And that's what's cool about having a great hunting circle. And I've called friends and they're like, dude, this buck is doing this, this, and this. And every year, 5 or 6 people will call me and be like, hey, I'm going to send you a topographical map. This is where that buck is. Like, what should I do?
Yep,
Love
that's
that
fun.
stuff.
It's a lot of fun. That chess match.
Best of luck. And yeah, exactly. Yeah, for sure, dude. Well, best of luck. Keep in touch, my friend, and call me anytime.
Thanks, Jesse. All right, that's going to do it for us today. Hope you enjoyed this one. You can follow along with all of our future episodes by subscribing to this podcast. Make sure you are also subscribed to the Meat Eater YouTube channel. You're going to see our new videos over there. We just dropped this week a new episode of the Back 40 video series. So check that out to see the progress we're making on that property. If you're not also, I'm going to keep on hitting you up with some subscription ideas here. If you're not subscribed for Whitetail Weekly, that's our newsletter coming from Meat Eater, where you can get updates on all of our new whitetail content coming out from the team there. Make sure you head to themeateater.com to do that as well. That'll also give you an opportunity where you'll find out how to win a hunt with Steve and I on the Back 40. So lots of cool stuff coming up. You can find it all over on the Meat Eater website. And until next time, good luck out there hunting. Stay tuned for a lot more interesting stuff from us here, and stay wired to hunt.
I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the old ceremonial hunting tradition of eating the heart out of the first animal you kill. Meat from those organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. You can get those same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And remember, use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase.